Hey gang. As you know from last week, it's Wisdom Wednesday, and we're here at Austin Dental Spa, and I've got my team here of dental assistants because it is National Dental Assistants Awareness Week, or something of that nature. But I want to introduce my 4 awesome dental assistants team: Heather, Jenny, Martha, and Ashley. They keep me in line as best they can, and help me spring into action. And they, as you know, if you've been to Austin Dental Spa, they are the A team. They tell me I'm the only member of the B team. But thank you all publicly for all that you do to help Austin Dental Spa and our patients have a great experience here each and every time. So,
thank you.
All right, and so we're going to have some fun today because we're going to talk about, you know, they say nothing's new under the sun, and I saw supposedly a new research study that just came out of the University of Washington, way up in Washington State. At the dental school there's a dentist that is also an epidemiologist. Like, boy, one wasn't boring enough. He got a PhD in epidemiology, and he's at the dental school in the University of Washington. And he came out with a study, and as I was reading it, I was like, you know, I heard this stuff 30 years ago, because one of my early mentors was Emmanuel Taraskin, who tops this guy. He had an MD, DDS, and a PhD. And he did a huge book that thick on vitamin C back in the 1970s and 80s with voluminous research about all these different ways that vitamin C affected the body. And he used to just shrug his shoulders. I saw him every year at a dental meeting, and he'd shrug his shoulders and say, well, it could have just as easily been vitamin D or vitamin E or vitamin A or vitamin B. I just happened to pick C because it seemed interesting to me. And back then in the 80s, he found people that were healthy, otherwise would never go to a doctor. He said the problem is all these studies that we're reading in the medical journals are sick people that are at the doctor, and that's why they're testing them. That's all those numbers on your blood panels that have been used since the late 50s. They came from an average of 4 people that they picked in a hospital back in the early 50s, and they took the average of those 4 people. These were people that were hospitalized. They didn't even specify what they were there for, and they took the average of those 4 people. And now 50 years later, 60 years later, we're still using those numbers to base, when you go to your doctor and give blood, that's what they draw the blood, and they go by that chart. It's like, that's insane. Dr. Taraskin took 1,000 healthy people, and he said I had a heck of a time getting them to come in for the testing because they were healthy. They didn't go to doctors and dentists. And he said, that's exactly why I want to study you. I want to know what your blood numbers are, and what do you do to stay healthy? How come you're so healthy you never go to the doctor? Because they had immune systems that were off the charts. They led healthy lifestyles. None of them were obese. Which is another thing that they've come out with just this week, that at least 50% of the people who were hospitalized with COVID starting a year ago, and this isn't just in the United States, although particularly in the United States because we can trust the data, but especially over in Europe, same thing, Italy. 50% of the people that were hospitalized, and a lot of the people who died, more than 50%, were obese as well. They were carrying way too much extra weight. And so that's not what I'm going to talk about today, but it does segue in. We're talking about vitamin C. This study at Washington came out with the fact that vitamin C, if you're low in vitamin C, your gums are more likely to bleed. And people have already started studying that with COVID, that people that end up in the hospital after the fact, they're looking at what their blood work was when they came in all the way across the world, not just the country of the U.S. And they're finding that they were low in vitamin D. There were some of them low in vitamin C, but particularly D. And so that's why I've been preaching since last March. Boost your immune system. It's one of the few things that you have in control of on yourself, is who you hang around with, whether you hang around with other people, and how to boost your immune system. And unfortunately, exercise and a good night's sleep are two of the biggies, but eating well and boosting your immune system with vitamins A, C, D, and some zinc, and you're through the roof. You're going to help your immune system, and you're going to be less likely, if you do get exposed, to actually contract it, so, or get as sick. So this vitamin C study out of the University of Washington, this dentist found that people that had low vitamin C had bleeding gums and hemorrhaging retinas. Now, bleeding in the eye, if it's in the cornea, you can see it in the whites of the eyes. This is in the retina, on the back side of the eye, so it's not something you would see. What you would experience if you had bleeding in your retina, you'd see little black spots floating around in what should be a clear field. So, and a lot of people have that. So they tested people that were complaining of those symptoms and found that the vast majority of them were extremely low in vitamin C. And it's fairly common in people that are on paleo diets, keto diets, because they're shunning a lot of the things that have high levels of vitamin C in it. So if your gums are bleeding, this has kind of been lost in translation over the last 30 years. And this guy just brought it back up, and it made me think, gosh, when we have patients that come in bleeding, it's not all just about brushing and flossing. And a lot of dental offices nowadays are getting it wrong, that if you're bleeding, they say, well, you just need to brush and floss more. And that's not necessarily true. I've got some people that are pretty good brushers and flossers, but they still bleed easily. And it could be that it's just a vitamin C deficiency. It's so simple. You just, next time you're at the grocery store, buy a bottle of vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams. This study said, that was one place I disagreed. He said 50 to 100 milligrams of vitamin C is what you should supplement with. And I went, Dr. Churaskin had this figured out 30 years ago, 1,000 to 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C. He said, if you were a smoker at any point in your life, and especially if you are still a smoker now, you should be doing 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C. If you're just a regular healthy person trying to stay healthy and keep your immune system boosted, 1,000 milligrams a day. I've been taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day for 35 years, since I met Dr. Churaskin. And so I don't even know what it would be like to not take that. And I eat a pretty healthy diet, which also has a lot of vitamin C. Unfortunately, if you're trying to get it through your diet, the things that taste the worst have the best vitamin C: Brussels sprouts and kale, particularly the leafy green vegetables. Kale has more of it than regular lettuce does. So you can choose to get it that way, or you can just buy a supplement at the grocery store and take that, and your body doesn't know the difference, really. But consider that if you do see that you've got some bleeding gums, try boosting your vitamin C and take up to 1,000 milligrams a day for at least a week before you're going to see a difference. There's no downside, there's no harm that you can cause to yourself. You can't overdose on vitamin C. It just passes on through your body. Any of the vitamins, if your body doesn't need it, it just doesn't absorb it, and it just passes on through the kidneys and the liver. So boost your vitamin C level, see if you don't notice the difference. Get out there and get some sunshine, that boosts your vitamin D level. And our health tip for the day, as we're springing forward, is stretching. I ran across, one of my patients started doing professional stretching several years ago, and I go see him every Friday. He has me down on the floor, and it's a two-person deal, but he's shown me over the years some very simple stretches you can do every day. Here's a good example right here. Just standing and walking forward with your arm against the corner of a wall. There's no way you cannot find a place to do this at home. Stick it in the doorstop, in the door to your bathroom, and then walk forward, and then do the same thing the other way. Put it this way, and then walk backwards. You'll feel a stretch in through here. Putting your hand over your head, and then of course doing it with the other arm too. Over your head here. I can get them back in the back when I don't have this lab coat on. And then the same thing this way. Bending over and stretching down to the floor to put your hands on the floor is another good stretch. You can lay on the floor and pull your knees up to your chest, one leg at a time. Twist your leg over to the other side, kind of a figure 8 twist. Those are basic stretches, but you'd be amazed at, by doing that at least 2 or 3 times a week, how effective that is to just stretching the muscles out. Every athlete will tell you, if you see athletes, they're out there stretching for 45 minutes before a football game, a basketball game, so that they don't get injured, so they're warming the muscles up. So that's our health tip for the day. I hope everybody stays safe and warm. It's back up to the 80s here in Texas, and we will see you next week for another version of Wisdom Wednesday. Spring forward.